Hello everyone, my name is Sherry Jala. I'll be talking about life, death, and dying. My ethical question is: should artificial measures be used to prolong life? Just gonna start by going briefly on what artificial measures are. I know we all know details of what that is, but I'm just gonna give a brief of some example of it. And this includes having life support or being on a ventilator, which helps with your breathing, having feeding tube for nutrition, IV fluids for hydration, and dialysis, a process of removing toxins and extra fluids when the kidneys fail. I selected this topic because as a healthcare personnel, we come across this situation a lot. Determining measures to take during end of life has been a very tough decision. With death, I have come to realize how little people know about how we pass these days. People are usually lost when it comes to making a decision for their loved ones, especially when it comes to end of life. Extending life is our greatest strength as species, although many, when it comes to these situations, prolonging their life is not what they really want. We also have family members that would rather end it than have them suffer. And in another hand, there are also some who will want to do everything possible to keep their loved ones around and keep them alive. This brings me to just talking, having a brief on what quality of life really means to a lot of us. We have different meanings. Everybody think of it differently. But quality of life essentially is our understanding of life and the living of it. The ability to live independently is one thing, but to be able to function, take care of ourselves is a whole different thing altogether. This includes having our organs beating and functioning properly like how it should, cells divided, a physical presence and functionality. Coming from the Gambia to the United States, medically, when it comes to the healthcare, it was like stepping into a time machine, especially when I got into the health field and understood more about modern medicine. In developing countries, death is more spontaneous and happens naturally. Death occurs at home instead of in the hospitals or nursing homes. And in these places, patients get to practice their religion and culture and die peacefully in their own comfort of their homes. Death is an inevitable part of the cycle of life. It gets really complicated when it comes to when to let go. Should we really be left in the comfort of our own home, surrounded by the family and loved ones, or should we be left in hospitals and nursing homes with a lot of machines, tubes, everything around us? That gives me to talking about the machines and tubes and just having heroic efforts to save one's life. There is of course a positive to it. It helps a lot of people live longer, stay alive, function better. Like a lot of people with dialysis, they tend to function and live longer life being on dialysis. But my topic today mostly delve with talking about when a patient is in vegetative state, persistent vegetative state, where they don't have any brain function, they have a flat EEG, no voluntary reflexes, or respond to external stimuli. With this, my main topic that comes in hand, and I know a lot of us are familiar with the Terry Scavier case. She's a 26-year-old that went into cardiac arrest due to potassium imbalance, which the doctors believe is from her eating disorder, bulimia. She felt at home. Her husband came and found her, called 911, like how everybody else will do. It took a while before the paramedics arrived, so she lost oxygen to her brain for a long period of time. So due to this, she was in a persistent vegetative state. Of course, they were able to bring her back, but She was in a persistent vegetative state. She had a flat EEG, no response to any external stimuli. She was kept alive over a decade. This happened in 1990, and she died in March 31st, 2005. She was a young lady, 26-year-old, not thinking all this will happen to her. Therefore, she didn't have any advance directive. She didn't have anything that says how she would want her life to end. This left her family, her husband specifically, who was making most of the decisions when it comes to her care. She also have her parents and her siblings that have a different perspective and a different idea of how her care should go compared to what the husband was doing. So these people were left to decide what is best for her, how she would want her life to end. There was a tag and pull for a long time when it comes to this case. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the case because it has been on social media. It was on the media everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. And at that time, I didn't understand a lot about medicine. I was really too young to think about it, but it kept me thinking for a while. I came across it at that time, but I didn't think too much of it. But as time goes, I feel like there was a lot of unnecessary tag and pull. I believe that shouldn't have happened, and it was a very sad experience for both the husband and her siblings and parents too, because everybody's trying to do what they think is best for the patient. So some years after she went into this condition, her husband lost hope and petitioned the Florida court to allow her feeding tube to be removed. The courts agreed, but the parents, who never lost hope that a miracle could still happen, obtained an injunction preventing the tube's removal. The husband appealed. The appealed court sided with the husband, and the family again filed for another injunction. And so they kept going back and forth. After year, they kept going back and forth. It was like a legal tug of war with a patient that was just in a vegetative state. As the rope that everyone was just pulling from one end, trying to keep whatever they think is what is needed for her. So it was just different ideas, different mindset. The family was just holding on to it, just not letting go. And the husband thinks that he's doing what is best for her. He was just ending her suffering. The husband thought she was just not in a good state, and he was ready to end her suffering. But the family was holding on to the possibility that she would get better. This was a federal court case. It was finally ruled to the favor of the husband, and there was no injunction again that was approved from the family. So they stopped the feeding tube and hydration, in which Terry Scavio died about 2 weeks after all those things were stopped. There's still a continuous research. A lot of people are still talking about it. It's been going everywhere. There's a recent video of her brother talking about the situation, and they still feel the same, that it was more of murder than just ending her suffering. Prolonging life in general. Just one will morally argue that you shouldn't kill people when they're still alive. But morally, people will argue that when you pull the plug, that means you're killing someone. But when you think about the ethical, they're actually dead. Modern medicine is what is keeping them alive. I personally think prolonging life means you're prolonging suffering. If one's end up in a persistent vegetative state for almost a month, meaning there is no brain activity, the patient have a flat EEG and zero response to external stimuli, then it is better to take off all the machines and all artificial measures. An initiation of comfort measures should then be considered. If you ask me, really, just giving my own opinion on the Scavia case. Now thinking more about it and having some idea about medicine, I believe she's been dead 15 years ago when the first cardiac arrest happened. This shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have tug and pull on trying to hold on to her when she is already gone. This brings me to talking about just who determines when life ends, who gets to decide what is the criteria, what are we really thinking about when we're trying to hold on to our loved ones, and just looking at beneficence and non-maleficence. Are we causing harm to these patients or holding or doing good to them? Just in conclusion, and like I said earlier, I believe that when a patient is brain deaf and there is no brain activity at all, their life should not just be prolonged. Their life should not be prolonged on breathing machines or putting them on tube feeds and IV hydrations. Thank you very much for listening.